Hello and welcome in. As you can see, we have two new casters with me. It's Middlecott and Oak. Welcome in, boys, and it is going to be a spicy game to kick this one off. CGA versus Burning Core. It is a bit of a rivalry of the mid-table. Middlecott, how are you feeling about this game today?
Oh, this is going to be exciting. We've got a couple banger games to finish us off, but yeah, let's focus on Burning Core CJ for now. Two of those teams that were slotting into the 4th and 5th place spots in spring had some very competitive back and forth games between each other. Then Burning Core with a 2-1 record overall, but CGA's win 23 minutes, rapidly accelerating Hybrid through the bot lane. And with the changes that Burning Core have made to their bot lane as well, there's so much spice going on here.
Yeah, and we have to bring that up. Obviously, new ADC Dent coming into play. Not really seeing much from them at the moment, but obviously we're going to see them a lot this season. And then Yuhi going for NEC, two support switching up. Oak, how are you feeling about that kind of switch? Obviously, role swapping can change the team a lot.
Yeah, and we didn't really have bot lane as Burning Core's biggest strength last season. He was something of a question mark for us within this team, and seeing how he's going to shift into that dynamic of support is going to be integral for this team because I think jungle support synergy is of utmost importance. Depending on the meta as well, now we're seeing more hyper scaling AD carries. Well, yeah, basically we are. It's up to Dent to synergize with that, and Yuhi picking up some new champions and working with that to make it all flex.
Yeah, we can quickly have a look at who they're having to play against. Obviously, Hybrid, a big talking point for CGA, and as you said, scaling through Hybrid, it was the big win over Burning Core, and it's a late game hyper carry meta. Middlecott, are you feeling pretty happy about the situation for CGA in this meta?
I mean, sort of like just as a neutral observer, yes, I think this meta looks really good for CGA. As someone that's got a little bit of bias towards them, I am particularly happy because Hybrid, ever since he entered the LJL in spring, has sort of skirted around the upper echelons of the AD carries there. Personally, I feel like he slots in a top 4 alongside Soul, Honey, and Utapon, but obviously there's a difference in the team strength, which is maybe dragging him down a little bit. I think that a lot of CGA's wins in spring were through playing through him, getting him accelerated on stuff like Jinx, Aphelios, or even some of the weirder AD carry picks. So yeah, I think this is really the guy to watch, especially in this matchup.
Now we're going to jump straight to the other side of the map. We're going to talk about the top lane, which, as we said, hasn't got the same level of priority right now, but it is still two big players in the top side. Nap versus Ray Farkey. Oak, what are you saying about this matchup?
Specifically for Ray Farkey, I'm quite excited to see how he handles the meta because last season he had two champions that we saw as big enablers for this player. The Darius came in early on in the season, something that wasn't meta at the time, and he managed to make it, I think, work for the most part, especially within lane, flexing that as much as possible. Then the Gragas came in later split and really helped to carry this thing. He performed that disrupting tank role on his team very, very well. Now the meta's rotated somewhat. Not only have we seen the Darius pop up and people have actually seemed to be starting to play it. It's a bit hit or miss still. People don't really know. But also that Gragas has fallen off in exchange for other tanks like Ornn and Sion who are finding more space. So whether or not we're going to see comfort picks coming from it or if he's able to adapt into something like the Ornn or the Sion and perform that same role is what I'll be thinking of.
We have to talk quickly about the predictions. Who have we chosen to pick up the win? It's two Burning Core, one CGA. This time I'm not the odd one out. Middlecott, obviously it feels like you're staying loyal, but is it more than just staying loyal as to why you've picked CGA today?
So there's a little bit of that loyalty factor, that loyalty program maybe in there as well. But I think the changes that Burning Core have made to their bot lane with Yuhi subbing in, swapping down to support and obviously bringing in Dent, who had middling performances in Academy. Definitely not a liability down there, but not one of the standout AD carry players that I really expected to sort of come into the LGL. I think that's the real sticking point for me because we've seen how Marble has come into the LGL and hasn't really been able to find his feet. And that was one of the guys that we were really hyping up in terms of the AD carry pool. And Dent, not hyped up as much. So it's a struggle for me to see them actually winning the lane against Hybrid and Nemma. And if you give Hybrid space, he will carry and he will win you games.
Yeah, for you, Oak, obviously you were going for the Burning Core. I just want to double check that we're not going into pick and bans again production. I wasn't too clear on what that one was said. Okay, all right. We are going to be going into bigger man, so I'm going to hand it over just before I threw a whole new point out there. Thank you very much, production, for giving me that shout. So, middle court, Oak. Let's get into game 3. Take it away.
Thank you very much, J-Real. And wow,
Ooh.
we have rapid fired through these bans. CGA
Yep.
taking away the Darius, the LeBlanc. That Talia has been permabanned as well. Burning Core focusing a bit more towards the bot side with their attention. That Wukong first picked likely going into Kassin's hands.
Yeah, it's surprising we've seen that exchange for the Wukong so far. We've seen teams struggle against it. The Ezreal comes in very early on. Very big opening for this team because it's really flexible at the moment. And it can be paired with something that's actually been mentioned to me very recently was the Yuumi, which we haven't seen yet today, but that's actually holding a pretty mid presence and pairs up so well with that Ezreal. But that's the big pickup. That Graves from Flawless is something he was able to pilot very well last season. One of his few picks. Remember, stuff like the Diana and the Karthus were real big spotlights for this player. Now he's on the Graves. Not as meta at the moment, but still fits in very well.
Yeah, one of those sort of scaling farming junglers. And it's kind of what we've been seeing so far today. Meta hasn't really been defining for a lot of these teams. Comfort still seems to take priority in a lot of situations. And the Kai'Sa Nautilus, it feels like we're continuing along in that vein.
Yeah, and it feels like almost there must be a default, especially with that Renata being taken away. This is Hybrid and Nema's territory, especially with some of the support changes that we've seen. It means that Nautilus has been the real big one. That Leona Nautilus combo that we saw from Nema, the Nautilus is the only one that remains. So they're very happy to lock that in. A very aggressive lane as well against this Ezreal.
Yeah, and with the Ahri going to be piloted by Dice in the mid lane. Again, Comfort champion, something that we were really seeing a lot in the last season. And I suppose Ahri is one of the few champions that has sort of stuck around a little bit longer than some of these other picks. That does mean that Burning Core can start to focus a little bit of their attention in the second phase of bans towards that mid lane, taking away the Lissandra.
Yeah, the list taken away is no surprise. We've already seen it today and actually seen how strong it was as well. In return, though, I think CGA are going to try and nip at this support pool a little bit. I wonder what Yuhi's pool is actually looking like because we can't really tell too much so far. I think maybe the Karma could be a scary angle for Burning Core at the moment, so we might see CGA try and take that away.
Yeah, this does feel like a lane that if you are able to get advantages in, you can snowball pretty effectively. That Kai'Sa is a champion who really benefits from those early kills. Getting those early itemization spikes on her is oh so important. Burning Core targeting away the Gwen. This is something that Nap played a couple times last season. Didn't really dominate in the early stages, but it was much more about the team fights where he could find weird flank angles and really ruin people's days.
Now, big thing is that we're on 12.11, so a couple of these changes have come in which have put champions on lesser priority, including that Gwen. Burning Core trying to take the skill matchup. So this is a matchup that's generally favored towards the Leona for this Nautilus specifically, but looking at how it fits into the comp, I'm really looking for Burning Core now to try and find something to create a little bit more cohesion with this comp because we've seen quite a lot of pick, but the front line a little bit limited from Burning Core right now.
Yeah, you need something that buys you a bit of space. I mean, Ray Farkey can do that. We were talking about the Gragas. Has seen some buffs, I believe, on 12.11, so could see him reprise that role. But a champion that we didn't see a lot of last split, but has risen in priority, is this Olaf.
Yeah, gets slotted into top lane very easily right now. The changes that he received just makes his champion way more consistent, especially if he gets into multiple melee matchups. And hey, look, there's a Leona, there's a Graves that he's generally going to be able to tag pretty consistently with that Ragnarok up. Combine that with the Zoe coming out from Kaito. We talked about Kaito's pool being pretty limited last split, and it seems like it's, it's only game one, but that does show a little bit here as after LeBlanc's taken away by their own team, his pool is, especially with that Syndra not as meta right now, they're so happy to just slot in that Zoe for him.
And the Camille picked up for Ray Farkey, so something that can sort of find pick, assist you in that role, but not really a frontliner that can buy space for the likes of a Graves or an Ahri.
And it really seals the deal then. The Burning Core are looking to play for skirmishes, play for the split push pressure. I don't know how well that's going to work into the Olaf though, because this champion is a renowned duelist at this point, was already strong before the changes in terms of pure fighting power, and now converting that after the mini rework, quite scary.
Yeah, and it's going to give Nap a bit more early agency, which I think is really important against the Camille, because once she gets to these later stages of the game, she's just half-barring people with Qs, and there's not really much counterplay that you've got to that. Olaf, notoriously powerful in the early game. We've seen Adam pilot it in the LEC and in the LFL, and have some interesting performances but if we're just talking about this pick, objective power in the early game.
Absolutely. And then when you combine that with the rest of the comp, it seems like they're really eager to look for that all-in combo. So, I mean, the Monkey, obviously, Wukong is one of the highest priority picks at the moment. But in terms of his pure skirmishing power with that Nautilus, definitely nothing to squeeze at. I think that the backline access from this composition puts Dent on a scary position, even with the Ezra upgraded, because in return, it looks like the rest of Burning Core, they're wanting to walk forwards as well.
Yeah, I mean, we saw that in the Hawks Rascal Jester game earlier, right? It was Soul on the Jinx who a little bit less safety than the Ezreal, but did find that if you were able to find that initial pick onto the AD carry, something like a Kai'Sa is so good at following up and capitalizing on those picks that you could take out one member of Burning Core immediately, and then maybe you can play out the rest of the game. We are going to be jumping onto the Rift now for the third game of the LJL 2022 Summer Split. CGA facing off against Burning Core.
God, a little bit of goosebumps there. Quite excited. And looks like no real level 1 things happening at the moment. One of the things we've seen become quite a default in the meta right now is support early warding into their respective top side and bot side middle brushes to stop any wave control access here. Doesn't end up happening because it looks like, I think, CGA giving a little bit of respect to quite an aggressive level 1 comp from Burning Core.
Yeah, I mean, Leona's good for finding picks, and Rayfarky can go for hookshot wall dive, Dice can start charm. It's not really the abilities that you want to be starting on these champions, but if you're able to secure a first blood, then it's kind of worth.
Doesn't really matter, does it? Kassin doing the blue buff leashless as well, which I think is really important, especially as it looks like he's trying to match Flawless. They want to meet in the bot side if possible. I'm assuming Kassin wants to contest that, and going leashless means that Burning Core have no actual info on where he started. Oh, big hook
from Nema onto Den. Not enjoying his first couple of minutes in the LGL. And I like that from Nema because I think last split we did have a few issues with this guy. He wasn't really gelling with Hybrid as much as he would have liked to, especially in the early parts of the split. Was talking about how Hybrid loves to play a bit more of an aggressive style, and Honey, who was Nema's previous AD carry, definitely not a player that I would associate that with.
No, and even then, even with that playstyle from Hybrid, it seems like they found at the end of the split an in-between for these players, because Hybrid at the end of the split had stats very high reaching for his AD carry peers. We saw high CS across the board from him, as well as just this team love to pump gold into this player. You see if they try and continue that in Summer Split now as same comp, you know, Nema's on the same champions as well. I wouldn't be surprised if they had the exact same goals.
Yeah, but on the other side for Burning Core, this man in the mid lane, Dice, is the player that I really want to watch. I know that Flawless does get a lot of plaudits, but I think that a lot of that is Dice affording him space. One of these Korean mid laners who came in at the start of the year and really has put his stamp on the region.
Yeah, absolutely. I feel like Flawless and Dice were the big synergistic combo in how Burning Core were able to find success in the early and latter parts of last split, especially with that Yasuo Diana combo that we saw them pump out a couple of times. Dice once again on a pseudo initiator, and even from last split, even from the play that he was able to find and maybe miss synergy between support, that's changed now. That gives so much more opportunity, especially if he's able to get on map and pair up with Dice. We maybe won't see the same flubs once mid-game hits that we saw from Burning Core last split.
Maybe not, as we did just see a small piece of interaction between the two junglers there. Kassin able to secure that Rift Herald because of the bot lane shove achieved by Hybrid and Nema. The Nautilus can roam up just a little bit, and Flawless, he's not going to overstep. He's not going to make any of these risky plays too early on the Graves when he wants to be farming and scaling up.
Taking a little bit of a look into the future, because we see Kassin actually getting a little bit of a quicker clear, combined with that Wind Cyclone being such a strong skirmishing tool around level 6 and Nap's very high presence within top lane within the early levels. I wouldn't be surprised to see Kassin try and do a reset and maybe start a bot to top side and be early on in top side, get some vision around the tower, because I'm assuming that's where their first eyes are going to be set on.
Yeah, we have seen the Herald as an objective, like, rise in power level. I feel like early gold is just so much more impactful when these dives sort of post 8 minutes are a lot harder to achieve, and everyone's just a little bit tankier.
Yeah, even with the changes in 12.11, it's still a very dangerous game to be diving, especially looking at the players from Burning Core. I mean, from both sides of the spectrum, these champions are quite difficult to be diving by yourself.
Yeah, Camille with that Hextech ultimatum can really turn things around.
Very scary.
The Ahri has so much mobility once she gets to level 6 as well.
Just coming back to bot lane now, helped set up a little bit of vision in this river, and we do see Drake spawning in under a minute. I'm actually wondering whether that's going to be contested at all between these two teams. We see both junglers now going to be hopefully pathing towards this bot side. I don't know how this next 2 minutes is going to end up going.
Well, it's risky because Flawless is yet to take it back. Has sort of done a little bit of a reverse clear. Is going to be heading back to the fountain now, as Kassim was obviously able to get on map a little bit earlier. Is going to be the Iron Spike Whip, actually, so potentially a stride breaker coming out from the graves.
Actually, that's something I can talk about. There's been a bit of gore drinker graves recently. People have been opting into this build as a... It's coming back again. People are still doing it, are still trying to find ways to hedge it in. I don't know how to feel about it. I've seen some really good play from it, but also the lack of damage that a champion can have on that build can really diminish its presence within mid game. But I mean, looking at the rest of the damage on the board, you have so much flat damage. If it's just getting that damage applied to the enemy team, maybe going Gore Drinker will help that. Anyway, Drake now first getting picked up by CGA, especially considering the fact that they, I guess with this Kai'Sa Nautilus lane, the amount of pressure that this lane has in terms of kill threat, they just have to give it up from Burning Core.
Well, and taking it at this sort of 6-minute mark means that when that Herald spawns in a couple minutes, as Nema doing a bit of a Spider-Man impression there, hooking onto the wall, when that Herald does spawn in about 90 seconds now, because of the shove that CGA are getting in this bot side, they're going to be the ones that can rotate up quicker and maybe double dip on these early game objectives. Yeah,
that's true. Nema notoriously last season seemed to remain quite hedged in this lane with Hybrid. With Kassin on this Wukong, with the level 6 active, hoping that they can find a wave shove and get Nema on the map. Saying that, they're looking for a fight in the boss side though.
Yeah, the Eclipse from Yuhi though, that W on the Leona provides so much tankiness. Doesn't even need to run the Aftershock, as that Everfrost is going to be the keystone, something that has really sort of risen to the top of priority in terms of support keystones over the last sort of 6 months or so.
Yeah. And with this Kai'Sa Nautilus lane as well, now that we've seen it for the second time just today alone, I am quite excited to see how much priority is put on these two champions. Kai'Sa's hovering in the lower levels of AD priority at the moment. Obviously, Lucian really has taken a firm grasp of AD meta at the moment, especially with that Nami combination. I'm surprised, I'm excited to see if these bans continue the way they are. These bot lanes are going to continue opting in for more aggressive lanes like this, because this is something I want to see from these players. I was talking earlier to you about seeing something like the Kalista from bot side as well, something more aggressive, especially if these laners, especially players like Hybrid, as you've said, one of the higher ADs on our list, even if CJ themselves aren't perhaps hitting top 4. Hybrid, a very strong player. I'd love to see champions like this piloted more often, because if you're able to pilot them correctly and get into that mid game with an advantage, it can snowball so quickly.
Just sort of like fundamentally entertaining champions. I'd much rather watch like a Kai'Sa or Kalista diving in, or maybe the Leona as well, as Yuhi exhausted, forcing double flashes, loads of summoners burnt by CGA. No one falling down just yet though, but that means that if they want to contest this Herald, they will be disadvantaged.
The Lulian. See the bubbles as well as the game freezes up for just a moment.
I think Kaito looking to get some poke damage down onto Dent. Not sure if this is just on our end. Hopefully we can get that fixed up fairly soon. That was a pretty decent chunk onto the Burning Core AD carries. Another bubble is going to be thrown out and land. CGA playing this quite patiently, as there goes the hook landing onto Dice from Nema, but he's taken out immediately. It's a 1-for-1. The first blood goes to Burning Core, though. Kassin going to be dropping low, dropping down, as Ray Farkey trades himself in, dives Hybrid to pick up the third kill of the game for Crest Gaming at the flash over the wall, but Kaito can follow with the damage under toe. Nap with 4 for CGA. They take the fight.
What a fantastic fight from CGA. It's a synergistic point. They stance slowly and securely, using Zoe to create HP advantage, take the fight afterwards. Hybrid's looking for the fight in return, though. Actually managed to get away as well. Yes, big win for CGA as they pick up a 3-for-1, I think that was. And even though they don't secure the Herald, that's a nice lump of gold going into their pocket. We're going to get the replay here and just look at Kaito's positioning here. Chunking out Den right at the start of the fight. Remember, this Ezreal's so squishy against this kind of a comp. Combine that with the bubble, and then the slow play from this comp. Very, very smart. Big hook onto Dice really secures this win for them, because even though Burning Core managed to find a bit of return damage here, you can see they pick off Nap there, as well as this Hextech Ultimatum coming in to pick off Kassin. Ultimately picking up these key DPS members means there's nobody there to clean up Kaito, to clean up Hybrid, and they can get a very clean 4-for-2.
This blind undertow.
Without vision as well.
That's very, very nice. That's very, very nice. I did see him fall asleep, so maybe a little bit easier than otherwise. But a 1-5 for CGA in the early game. 2-0-2 now on Kaito. Zoe has already got those Sork shoes in pocket, and looks like Kassin will be able to take down that Herald. Nappy might be under a little bit of fire here.
As Ragnarok very soon. And with the changes to Olaf, he keeps the MR and armor that he gets from his Ragnarok during the ultimate. So it's a very risky dive they're looking for here. We already talked about scary dives in the early game.
Going to be close. He's starting the primary tank. Actually, Flawless is taking it, and Nap just continues to heal up! Oh. Recklessly swinging down at the members of Burning Core, getting a 1v3 in the dive.
It's such a big win. Even if he dies there, CJ have the Herald. They get to use it in top side. On top of that, he lives, pulls a kill, and first turret goes over to only Hybrid and Kassin. The players we saw is not only the early game initiators, but also the carries for this team. CJ have set themselves up fantastically now, as they've secured a 3k gold lead only 10 minutes into the game.
And that is absolutely perfect. It's exactly what we want from CGA, a team who can have their struggles a little bit in the early game, fall to disadvantages. That's something that they've had as a problem in the past, but also just historically as a team, this is much better from them. And the fact that they're doing it against Burning Core, who I think a lot of people have got pegged as one of their closest rivals this split, is great, great stuff. And
even though we're talking about this immediately, we're going to have to probably see some setup coming in again, because second Drake's now spawned. It's Hextech as well, so people are very eager to get this single Drake stacked on top of them. Burning Core have the advantage right now. All their vision is held on this side. Double red trinket coming out too. DJ seem to be, I think, giving up the space for it.
Yeah, don't want to blindly run into a bad scenario. And yeah, like we were talking about, the vision control
face check a charm.
Core. Just a little bit, yeah. You don't want to face check a charm, or a hook shot, or just Leona in general. So I think intelligent play does mean that Burning Core are going to be able to get a little bit back, but they're going to need more if this early game is going to get fixed for them.
Yeah, absolutely. It delays the soul that CGA could potentially be looking for by 5 minutes or so, or I guess 10 minutes technically. But CJ still are in the lead at the moment. You can see finally now Mythic's picked up for the majority of members. Kraken coming in for Hybrid, so we're locked into that build now, combined with a Stride Breaker on the Olaf. Pretty standard so far. It's really going to be what Kaito opts into here, probably a Ludens as well.
Yeah. You're really focused with this composition of getting that initial pick, of just completely 100 to zeroing someone. And because Burning Core don't really have a frontline outside of Yuhi, pretty much anyone that you do get that catch onto can be exploded.
Yeah, especially within mid-game, because Yuhi's defensive abilities are definitely going to fall off, as you can see his gold income not as high as other players, and Ray Farkey doesn't really hit that 3k HP mark until 2 or 3 items, especially if he's opting into that Ravenous third.
He may be opting into killing Kaito, though, as CJ's mid laner cheating towards the bottom half of the map, because that's where Kassin is, that's where his jungler is, that's where the safety is. But if he oversteps with the Power Star, he could get punished, as Ray Farkey is going to come through with a Hextech Ultimatum. Cyclone to buy some time, but it is not enough. And I think the Monkey may be going down as well. Kassin with the second charge, able to get back under his tower, but that's a bit better from Burning Core.
Yeah, Kassin playing quite smart there to hover Kaito, but I guess he just didn't expect 3 members to be there. Neither did Kaito. Burning Core playing fantastically around the vision just to get a small pick-off, but definitely a pick-off of value. And you get to see it again here. You can see Kaito are just outside of his flash range as he gets engaged upon here. So he can't flash outside of that Hextech Ultimatum. Big pick-up by producers to point that out.
Thank you very much. Big fan of production staff, both on our broadcast and for the Japanese broadcast. Love those guys, making sure that everything gets working. But it does mean that that gold lead that CJ were able to secure has closed a little bit as we hit the 14-minute mark, and the plates fall off the towers.
Yeah, and we get up access to double teleport as well. And we're seeing 4 teleport, or 2 teleports on each side, I guess I should say. So side lane's going to be very, very important coming into this, because this is really where Camille actually starts to get a little bit of space in this lane. Once this Divine Sundra's picked up, Camille, notorious scaling power, obviously, but with every item, we're going to be keeping a check on how she's able to handle this Olaf, as this is a relatively new pick to enter the meta. The rework did a really, really good job of solidifying this champion as a, I guess, making him more consistent but also inconsistent at the same time with how his ulti usage ends up happening. I think into the combo it's been drafted into, though, he's always got targets to hit, which just means that Ragnarok's going to last a long time in some of these fights.
Yeah, fundamentally, Olaf is back, and that's kind of the long and short of a lot of the changes. CGA getting a small invade onto the bot side jungle of Burning Core. He's actually going to flash forward, pop the depth charge as well. They're going for the one-shot onto Flawless, but it's not going to happen. Kassin still going forward with the Cyclone, but is going to be forced to go back as Yuhi engaging on the other side. TP coming through, but look at Nap on the back line, going insane, but there's too many people to deal with. Rayfaki is dead, the Olaf is alive, and Kaito's going forward. The Zoe taken low, though, 20% HP, as another hook lands from Nap, and Kassin is the beneficiary.
It almost looked like Burning Core were able to turn that around there. Flawless lasting so long with this Gold Drinker and this Kindle Gem, this hybrid build coming in for him, but it wasn't enough, as Nab did a fantastic job. Even though he fell very low in that fight there, he managed to split apart Burning Core's remaining members, and it gave CGA the time to find that fight. Now, off at the back of that, it looks like they may be able to pick up the turret within bot side and slowly and further secure this gold lead here. So yeah, as we watch this replay, keep eyes on Nap as he manages to find a fantastic flank on this to really take apart the carries from Burning Core's side.
And honestly, I was worried for CGA here. I thought they'd gone for an overstep, but the fact that Nap can just walk in, level 10, only 1 item on the Olaf, and survive this long when fighting basically 3 members of Burning Core is incredible stuff. And then the follow-up that comes through from CGA, recognizing they can still get stuff from this fight, securing another kill for Kassin. They then converted that into that bot lane tower. They're going to take the Herald as well. This is brilliant stuff to see.
Yeah, these kind of more macro-orientated fights are stuff we're only starting to see pop up because of durability patch there. Space where Nap can walk in and very clearly assess how much damage he's going to take in a fight, as well as Kaito doing the same thing at the tail end there, jumping towards Yuhi to secure that kill for his team. Stuff we wouldn't have seen beforehand because they would have just been blown up.
Flawless playing with fire a little bit there. And I like that you highlighted Kaito, because so far this game, he's been playing pretty damn well. He was a player in Spring who I think we often criticized, joking about him playing weak side in mid lane, because whilst he wasn't die a lot, didn't really generate too much pressure, but he's been going forward with these paddle stars, catching a lot of these trouble bubbles, and that's buying a lot of the space that CGA need to go for these sorts of plays.
Yeah, he was a bit of a question mark, because we were thinking about how, especially with his reliance on Ryze last season, as well as the Syndra, both champions of which have fallen off quite significantly within the meta, and this will be something that we talk about in our next matchup as well. We were wondering what he had left available. Now that Zoe was something he put out a couple of times last split and looked pretty okay on, and it seems like that continues here. A pretty good performance from him so far. It's really when this mid game hits for CGA where we start to see the flaws of this team, especially Nema and Kaito, were the big bleeding points once mid game hits and once they have to do their own roles in the team. And specifically Nema, that's setting up this vision consistently. I think Burning Core, even through this deficit in gold, have managed to have a pretty firm grasp on the vision. Now that CGA are hitting this mid game and these 2 side lane turrets have been unlocked, we really want to see Nema get on map and consistently pair up with Kassin and get vision on board in more aggressive positions so that they can look to unlock this mid lane turret, especially with a comp that I think can quite easily look for a siege. If they find an individual member, look for a pick as well.
Oak, did you see the goal difference between the AD carries on that graphic?
I wasn't paying attention.
3k lead for Hybrid. That's an entire damn item. Kraken Slayer and Phantom Dancer already completed on the Kaiser, and has got that serrated Dirk in his pocket as well. Shelly going to be summoned in the mid lane. Won't be able to take out this tower, but it does get a fair chunk. Yeah,
you're getting that below half HP, but very difficult to be walking through that, especially if all the members of Burning Core are grouped up towards this mid lane. It's very difficult for CJ to really look for something with a lower ranged AD like the Kaiser here. So it's going to be up to CGA to pull those members apart, string them apart, leave Dent in mid lane by themselves, or Dice and then pressure off of that.
Dice is overstepping a little bit
game.
there. Nautilus hitbox. I'm not gonna lie. I feel like there were some balance changes that came in like in the previous 15 seconds. I'm pretty sure that hits on live service. But, never not quite able to find the engage.
And now we see a return to neutral once again, and CJ finally, you can see this vision set up within this river. They have a pretty safe hold, which means that Ray Farkey is going to want to look for these flanks. They're going to spot him out pretty early on, but CJ seem a little bit stuck at the moment. There's not really much they can do outside of unlock this mid lane turret. I guess they'll be playing for next Drake and potentially the Soul.
Yeah, they're winning the fights, and there's nothing really that Burning Core need to fight them over at the moment. So CGA don't have really a way to push forward as much. I do agree with you. Once we start seeing the next Drake, maybe this Baron, considering how fed Hybrid is, maybe can start that one up a little bit earlier. As Kaito actually finding damage onto Dice, really showing mastery of this Zoe pick. Yeah,
absolutely. I'm hoping we don't get a repeat of last game. I hope Baron eagerness is a little bit more tempered.
Why would you even say that, Dom?
I don't want to curse the broadcast. It's fine. I didn't say anything. We just resumed the game as if I said nothing.
Perfect stuff. that next Drake spawning in 2 minutes. CGA already got 2 in their pocket, I believe. So that would be soul point for them, which gives you a lot more angles to play. And I really like the Ocean Rift because it spawns all of these bushes, which means that establishing this vision is a little bit harder because you've got a lot more stuff to face check.
And I hope CJ keep up this pressure, as Hybrid's by himself in top side could be in a very tricky position, but CJ going to move back down. Yeah, CJ are playing on a timer in my mind, as Flawless dashes very aggressively.
Not going to be punished too much as Kaito slowed down there. We are getting a flank TP. We are going for this fight as Kassin is able to get onto the backline, onto Dent, and Yuhi is dead. I said that a load last split, and I might say it some more this split. Flawless taken low, but it's the Nautilus who's been traded back. Oh my god! Hybrid is unreal.
What a wash from CGA there. That slow fight. They remember, Burning Core opted into that fight. There was a dance for an extended period of time. I just sat back and I was like, there's no way this fight's going to happen there. Yuhi walks up slowly and gets punished for doing so. Fantastic from CGA to really understand that actually they can take that fight there. This is the comp with the lead. And yeah, you get to see it showed here. So CGA doing their best to get some aggressive vision around this Baron, because they know that's where they're going to be opting into if they get a fight within the next 5 minutes. And Flawless and Yuhi just seem to lack a little bit of respect to how CGA can stance for this fight. You can see Yuhi slowly walking up. They're trying to find picks onto Hybrid, but Nema does a fantastic job of immediately dropping that depth charge, disrupting Yuhi, and in turn that gives so much space for Kassin to disrupt the rest of the team, and they just play off of that.
I think the key thing that really encapsulate how a lot of that fight went for Burning Core was how Dent was forced to position. He was on one side of the wall, then he had to jump over, and then Kassin gets on top of it and he has to go the other way. 1.4k damage compared to Hybrid's 4.6 really illustrates the difference between these two AD carries at the moment. Saying that though, Burning Core have secured position around this Ocean Drake, and CGA are looking to fight them for it. Nap very far forward, but Hybrid just taking towers in the mid.
Yeah, really smart from CJ. They get to slow play. They have the Zoe. They have the enablers for this comp within mid game. Burning Core have to walk out in fear of losing potentially another fight, especially with the Baron active at the moment. That sets up CJ very nicely for this Ocean Soul as well. They're on Soul Point now. It's really up to them to see what remaining pickups they can find with this kind of Baron. Economy Baron, as RMC has told me many times.
It's a good term. Getting some gold on maybe some people that aren't Hybrid, although I'm sure that he'd fancy a couple more. These bubble angles from Kaito are so
very smart.
They're very smart. They're very obscure. They're really hard for Burning Core to track, and it's opening up more of this space. CJ now taking down this bottom inner tower, their first tier 2 of the game, and I imagine the next are going to be falling pretty soon.
Yeah, and the downsides of Burning Core's comp is that the wave clear is a little bit limited in these siege scenarios. The physical wave clear comes mostly through Flawless, but he's having to maintain CS on the camps. The fight begins.
And Dent is dead. Yuhi will fall as well. The tower dropped down. Yes, Nema's going to be traded over, but it's still a 4v3 in favor of CGA with a Baron for another 45 seconds. They could look for this mid lane tower. I Dicey does land a charm onto Nap, and this wave is slowly being cleared out. The siege, not quite there.
And look, once again, they trade 1 for 1. They unlock a turret, and then they go, okay, that's fine. That's enough for us. They're going to get their resets in now because they're probably sitting on a plentiful amount of gold, and they know not to overextend that lead. So really slow and patient for CGA, even though they know that they're playing against a scaling comp.
And what was it? It was a bubble from Kaito that started this all off.
Yep. And this is the thing with these kinds of, as you get to see Burning Core get absolutely blown up here. This is the thing with these bubbles that Kaito's been blowing out consistently and hitting these different members of Burning Core. Whilst he's hitting a few members who don't get punished for it. So the fact that he's hitting them consistently creates space for his team, and eventually it can lead to plays just like that one.
And the thing that we've always had this discussion with CGA is that individually, you can have performances that are of the sort of top tier players. Like obviously Hybrid has been in that conversation ever since he joined the team, but Cassina's had top 3 jungle performances. Nema looked amazing last summer, and he still had a couple of those good performances in spring. Nap also good, and Kaito was the sort of one player who we looked at going, you're kind of a little bit out of place, kind of in this lower echelon of mid laners. I don't want to get too excited too soon, Oak, but if this performance is anything to go by, we may be looking at a different man in the mid lane.
Well, I've never heard of somebody getting predictions in day 1 and then them turning on their head. That's never happened before. So I think you're in the clear. I think we're all good here. Anyway, CGA now, once again, setting themselves up for this Baron. Seems to be pretty similar to last time. I hope Burning Core don't fall into the same pits as before. Now, second items are coming for Burning Core, and with each item pickup that we see, this comp spikes really heavily because Ezreal now on this prolific mid-game spike that we know so well. Oh, Dicey, what are you doing?
Yeah, you can't stand there, mate. Goes into the Zhonya's, but he's just dead. And now Rayfaki going to be rooted up. TP's going to come through, and CJ want this fight! Sin going in with a Cyclone already, a triple! Secured for Hybrid as Nap. It's just going to back away. It's that aggression, but there's no oversteps.
And immediately CJ know exactly what they're looking for next. They're going to pick up this top lane turret as well. And with no other objectives available, I'm assuming they'll probably just continue to set up the vision, clear out vision, and clear out this jungle as well. This limitation, how much Burning Core's income, how much they can find through CS and jungle creeps is so important to restricting their scaling opportunities. And CJ continue to flexing that here.
Yeah, this Camille, this Graves have got a long time before they're going to be useful. And we saw how impactful just getting a lot of this pressure can be. Dice is just walking through his own jungle, but you can't do that at this stage of the game.
Yeah, a little bit confusing. It seems like Burning Core are just a little bit disorganized at the moment. We're hoping that they pick up in terms of communication, because that's a big flub coming up from especially one of Burning Core's standard members. Members we don't really expect to make those kinds of mistakes. No,
Dice is Mr. Consistent. He's the Victor player, which if that does not scream Mr. Consistent, I don't know what does. A rare overstep from him, and CJ in the right place to punish. And now we're in a map state where Ocean Soul spawning in 35 seconds, Baron spawning in 20, Burning Core a force-to-face check, and that's a bad time! Rayfaki knocked into the air and knocked into the grave as Hybrid dives forward, another kill secured! It's just too easy for CGA as Dice is the last one left alive!
And Hybrid does his job to perfection. The killer instinct coming in to clutch out the remaining kills there. And he flashes over the wall to secure DPS on the backline and then cleanses out. Very well played from Hybrid and from the rest of the team. I wouldn't be surprised to see this game taken right here.
Yeah, I thought that 12.11 was meant to be slower. CGA did not get the memo! Nema flashing forward as Dice gets rolled! In the first game of Summer Split, CGA take the dub!
What a dominant performance from this team. I was expecting this to be far, far closer, especially considering the fact that Burning Core opted into a comp I would consider much more meta at the moment. This Ezreal has been a default for a lot of players. The Ahri, another default as well. Combine that with the Camille coming in topside, I assumed that this would be a very standard game, a very slow-paced game coming up from Burning Core, who did the same thing last season. We saw the victor in mid lane, as you mentioned. Dice loves playing like this, playing this slower game, but CJ came in fighting and took a firm grasp of that game and just kept punching.
And the crazy thing for me is that there was never a bad fight for CGA. They were able to continuously chain together exquisite plays. I mean, Hybrid had a great game himself, going deathless on the Kai'Sa, scoring like double-digit kills is ridiculous in a game this quick. But it really was a team effort in a lot of these fights.
Yeah, I'm really excited to see how CGA perform this split now. Suddenly, I'm very hopeful for this team because we talked about the inconsistencies really hurting this team last time. But once again, you see Kassin do well, you see Hybrid do well, and that all washes away. You see the best parts of this team come to fruition. And now I'm thinking, okay, so how is this team going to continue to play throughout split? Because so long as they can maintain, even if Kaito's on different champions, we can see the same kind of play come out from him. Hybrid, monstrous on this Kai'Sa. There are so many other ADs I think we could see him perform similarly on, and especially more to his style as well. This is a hopeful start for CGA.
Which is possibly the worst way for them to start a split. If past results are anything to go by. I do want to touch on Burning Core just a little bit briefly because honestly, just not a great game for them. Dice getting caught a little bit later on, but I think one of the real issues that I saw is that there just didn't seem to be a lot of the cohesion there that we would have necessarily wanted. And in particular, I think he felt very, very disconnected from the rest of the team, which you can't be doing on support.
Yeah, it's something we sorted about right at the start of draft, is that Yuhi needs to be in tandem with Flawless, on map, pairing up to enable Dice, and especially Ray Farki, who we saw as the strongest side of the map, the players you want to be playing towards. Instead, disrupted fights and unreasonable expectations from Yuhi to really start fights correctly meant that Dice and Flawless were left playing on the back burner, and Dent as well left playing on the back burner. He was having to play the majority of fights walking away from the enemy comp as Ezreal, and kiting heavily, very heavily into a Wukong is very, very difficult. And you saw in the damage numbers, especially around that fight around Baron, Hybrid able to pump out 3 times the amount of damage that Ezreal was.
Yeah. And Hybrid's just that good. I think we're going to be jumping to a short break now before our final game of the day, a rematch of our spring finals, DFM versus Sengoku. You do not want to miss that.
Questions have arisen. Were the core a bit burnt out from last split? We will have to decide, but let's get into it with pick and bans. It should be coming up on the bottom of your screen shortly, but let's start with CGA. Let's start with the winners. Olaf coming through very spicy in this game. Not been seen today. Looking good. Oak, how are you feeling about the pick?
I'm a big fan of it, especially with the rework that came in. Obviously, it's spiked up in popularity. It's not S tier by any means, but it slots in very specifically into more aggressive comps that want to be brawling constantly. Maybe something like a Leona, we would slot in very well against. And through that, I think, especially with Nat piloting it very, very well, slow playing through his early game to force CS deficit onto the Camille, and then basically playing weak side top, but forcing that CS deficit was fantastic from Nap. And I think it really is more of a testament to the player than the champion itself in terms of how clearly they seem to understand how it fits in within the team. And I think it showed its head there on that bot side dive.
Yeah, Nap was against Burning Core, but he was the one that wanted the smoke. Middlecore, as the CGA fan, I'll let you see. Well, I want to hear your opinion on how CGA have adapted to this meta.
They haven't. They've just picked the champions that worked really well for them in spring. Of course, I jest a little bit. I think that Kai'Sa and Nautilus and obviously the Wukong do exist in the meta. But this was a lot of comfort. It was CJ really sort of playing their style that feels a bit more enabled on this patch, where fights can go a little bit longer. So when Kassin and App are making these flanks, they can just last a little bit longer. And then we saw that the follow-up could come through. You could get that killering stick coming out from Hybrid, jumping onto the back line, blowing people up with the Akathian Rain. And I think the most impressive thing for me for CJ was how it was consistent good plays coming out from them, which is never something that we've said about this team.
Going on to the other team, Burning Core, Oak. It feels like they also didn't really adapt to the meta. It feels like they've kind of stayed in the past. A lot of picks that we saw from them in the last split, things like Camille, things like Graves, things like Ari, that yes, can be played now, but it feels like they're not really shifting to what would be considered optimal.
Yeah, I think really the two picks I was questioning there was the Graves and the Leona. So these are picks that last season had a lot of play, not only in Graves' flexibility, but also Leona specifically was seen as somewhat of an answer to this Nautilus in lane, and generally strong frontline in a very squishy meta was favored. Now fallen off a little bit in play, and you can see it really show there where Yuhi, maybe it's more to the player than the champion, but even through these picks, just didn't look too hot on them. And it led to this comp kind of lacking a little bit of cohesion, especially in these team fights. We saw what they could do maybe with a 4-1 comp, but they weren't able to find that into the Olaf and then seemed a little bit lost.
Yeah, and getting into the game, it felt like we've had a lot of even games today, but this one, a little bit less so. It felt like very much CGA all the way. They got a strong lead. They got obviously a really nice team fight around that Herald. And then the 1v3 tower dive, Middlecore. I feel like that was kind of a good example of how the rest of the game went, to be honest.
I'm gonna be real. IMO, this never really works out for Burning Core. I think finding the dive, trying to kill onto the Olaf is difficult in any meta. But when Olaf is a little bit stronger, has a bit more durability at low HP, and the towers do more damage, it was just a little bit of a desperation play. And I like what you touched on there, kind of being emblematic of Burning Core in this game generally. A lot of reaching, not a lot of grasping.
Yeah, indeed. And to be honest, taking away from this game, obviously CJ looking pretty strong. They look like, you know what, actually, they're up for contention here. Burning Core, are you a little bit nervous, or are you just like, okay, it's game one, they've just come back into it, give them a bit of time?
Well, I think both of these teams last split struggled with what we're seeing from this game, which is where they were inconsistent. And CJ had some games last split as well that we were like, wow, this team looks amazing. Burning Core had some games last season as well. We were like, oh, well, Flawless looks really lost. The big thing for Burning Core is that with this bot lane change, it seems like the play is lowered from last split, which is the opposite of what you want to see when you're making Slayer swaps into Summer. Maybe there's still a little bit of growth for this team as they get through the split, and maybe we'll see them pop off a little bit more, as we did see akin to that early play in spring. I'm not holding my hopes, though. I'm all for CGA now as maybe taking this rivalry a little bit to themselves.
Well, talking about rivalries, we had the mid-table rivalry. Now we're going to go to a short break. And then we're going to be joined by the big rivalry, the Godzilla versus King Kong of this region. It is going to be Sengoku versus DFM. You do not want to go anywhere. We're going to go to a very short break. Then we're going to have a little surprise. And then we'll be back to discuss the final game.